Last time on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
I can't drink this. I'm allergic to it. I forgot. Last time I had it.
And now the conclusion.
Rule of Acquisition 55 says, take joy from profit and profit from joy. All I know is I am overjoyed to be with you for Audio Umox, the place to go for DS9 commentary, episode by episode. We're starting from episode 1 and finishing up with, episode
170.
170 something. I'm Simon Van Gelder.
And I am John Christopher.
And we are with you and excited to tell you about this week's episode, which is If Wishes Were Horses, which comes from a English language proverb and nursery rhyme. If wishes were horses, beggars would ride, is where it goes, which basically suggests if wishing could make things happen, then even the most destitute people would have everything they wanted. Well, I'm wishing for episodes like this to go away, not to surprise people too much. I'm really getting kind of tired of these episodes. But how are you doing, first of all, before we jump right in? I'm sorry about that.
I'm doing so well, Simon. Other than sporting event losses in abundance over the weekend, if wishes were footballs, I would have had a much better weekend. But, thankfully, my paycheck is not derived from the victories of those teams. So that was it. Other than that, a very pleasant weekend and week. Doing well. Yourself?
Yeah, I've had a little bit of losing going on with one of my teams. I'm still waiting tonight as we record on a Sunday night. I'm waiting to see if my beloved Kansas City Chiefs are going to pull off yet another win and continue to be the only undefeated team in the NFL. But I smell trap game already. So they got trap game. They're tracking trap game onto the field. It's on their shoes. They can't get it off.
It's tough.
It is tough. Yeah. But sorry for your teams, and my beloved college team. Boy, they laid an egg yesterday. So
they did indeed. They did indeed.
Boy, that's awful. But
Oh, I was just gonna say, I enjoying some Tranya because are a little early because of that.
We must drink. This is Tranya. I hope you relish it as much as I. But first, the Tranya.
In honor of this week's episode, a little bit of Grey Goose Coy Wolf, which is it has notes of caramel, citrus, and pine. It's kind of the wolf in the forest kind of flavor to it. Little Red Riding Hood, I'm just going with fairy tales. I'm sorry. It's a long rabbit trail. If you care to go with me.
Okay, what is it though?
It is it's a beer. It's a pilsner, but it has some nose of pine a little bit, and some caramel notes as well, and so a nice medium amber, and it's from our friends at Goose Island in the greater Chicagoland area.
So never Coy Wolf. What is it called again?
Yes, that's it. Coy Wolf.
All right. Sounds delicious.
Werewolf?
Werewolf.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks good. Well, not to be outdone, my most recent rafting trip, I went through Springfield, Missouri, and there's a great local brewery there called Mother's Brewing Company. And when I was there, I had, by the way, their slogan is "Home is where the hop is." Very clever. And I'm having it's a Towhead American Blonde. I do prefer American Blondes, as you know. And I had some there, and I really enjoyed it. So I picked up a sixer of a 5.2% alcohol, 21 IBU, 12 fluid ounces, and here we go.
Very nice. Cheers, my friend. So you're going straight out of the bottle. I prefer a nice Pilsner glass.
Yeah, you're classy like that.
Yeah. Yes, all kinds of classy over here.
Classy. All right. Well, enjoy your Bev. I'll enjoy mine. And now we'll get into If Wishes Were Horses.
If Wishes Were Horses, we would have a different episode to review.
That's okay.
Okay, so dive in with Odo and poor little Quark in really an empty bar there, and not a lot going on, not a lot of traffic, which, occasionally, actually pretty frequently, I will call bullshit during these episodes. So the very first, I have to say, if a wormhole were discovered that connected two quadrants of the galaxy that had never interacted in the past, one would think that there would be science vessels just flying back and forth between those two places, trading vessels, all kinds of traffic going through there continuously. You wouldn't have days and days with no traffic going through. It'd be like opening up a direct link from New York to Los Angeles that could get you there, like Elon Musk develops his like super loop, and you could get from New York to LA in 2 hours, and no one's taking the trip. That's the equivalent in my mind.
Well, that's a kind of a Star Trek trope, though, that if you look at the original series crew in the movies in particular, there's only one starship in the quadrant. I mean, my gosh, man. I mean, how many times was it just the Enterprise? There's even a line in Star Trek V, the much maligned Star Trek V, deservedly so, where the Admiral says to Kirk, through the view screen, you're the only ship in the quadrant. I need Jim Kirk, and Kirk under his breath goes, "Oh, please." And you just think, is that ad lib? Because it's like that's what we're all saying that. It's like Star Trek 3, the movie, when they steal the Enterprise and they've got like one. They're in space dock and they get out of space dock. Somehow they get the doors open. They steal the Enterprise, and the Excelsior chases them. They figured out how to open the doors to escape, but they somehow did not figure out how to close them behind them so that the Excelsior can't get out and follow them. But it doesn't matter anyway. They took the transwarp drive keys out or whatever. But the point being, that Scotty's got them, and the more complicated they make the plumbing, the harder or easier it is to stop it up or whatever. But the point being, there's only one ship that can go after him, and that was it, huh? So it's kind of a Star Trek trope, I think, that there's just not very many ships. I think it's more excusable here because they're out in the middle of nowhere, but than it is to be in orbit of planet Earth, where that's Starfleet Command. Right. There should be a dozen freaking ships.
And if you could make a ship via robot, automated technology, you'd think they'd just be kicking them out by the hundreds.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And I don't disagree with your point either. You're right. If this is the case about this area of space,
if it's being so important,
it should be lousy with scientists. But anyway.
Yeah, you would think. Anyway, suspend disbelief.
Suspended.
As I often do. And the two of them are there in an empty Quarks, and Quark starts hitting up Odo to go to the holosuite, and I flow with somebody, whatever it is that shapeshifters do on their spare time.
Flow.
And and so Odo, of course, is completely disgusted by that whole prospect, and I think he doesn't fully understand the human imagination or other beings' imagination concepts, and then no sooner does that conversation end than Jake is on his way to the holodeck, and with a bat and a mitten, and
ideas in his head.
Odo suspects the worst. Not understanding the concept of that game, thinking this is some kind of freaky sex game that Quark has for teenage boys, and so he has to explain that no, it's a game called baseball. And in classic Star Trek form, we've got two known names and one unknown name thrown into the mix.
It's the Star Trek rule of threes.
It's so you've got a Tris Speaker, who that may be, is that a real dude too? I'm not even sure. I'm not familiar with Tris Speaker. He's supposed to be from the early 20th century, so he's like a Ty Cobb kind of person. Anyway, and then Ted Williams, no name, and then Buck Bokai, which sounds like an Asian porn star to me, is what that sounds like. All right, so we get that going, and then we jump over to Miles trying to get his daughter to sleep, and he's reading stories from his Kindle. It's good to know that the Kindle is still around there in the 23rd, 24th century.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
was that a page white, or was that the original? I'm not sure.
It was the color. So
yeah.
it was the color version.
Oh, the Fire.
That's the Fire. Yeah. It might be an HD Fire or yeah. Anyway, so he's reading an old Earth fairy tale, one that obviously creeps him out as much as it creeps out his daughter, and puts her to bed. He goes in the other room, and his daughter comes out and says, the monster's still there. And so sure enough, the little Rumpelstiltskin is there messing with him and freaks him the hell out, which would me too. But
I mean, I think O'Brien displays the proper amount of, get the kid to safety and call security. I mean,
yes,
he's savvy enough after being on the Enterprise for 6 years or 7 years or whatever to know that, you don't screw around. It may look harmless, but it probably ain't.
Right,
so.
That's true. Because it could have been Q. It could have been any of a number of things effing with him.
That's right.
And yeah. But it looked very elfin there with the pointed ears and very, very creepy. I was kind of creeped out by it. I will.
It doesn't help that the guy playing him was on Twin Peaks and the X-Files all the time. So
yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that happens. We're trying to figure out what's happened. Oh yeah. So now third one is Dax. Now I missed Bashir gets put in the friend zone with Dax at dinner earlier in the evening. He's laying down, doing what distraught, forlorn doctors do. I guess he's sleeping. He's taking a nap when Dax shows up, or who he thinks is Dax, and starts, putting the heavy move on him. No sooner does he contemplate
going for it, and it's like, let's just go with this. I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna go with it.
Hey, I'm game. Yeah. Wait, maybe the drug will wear off, maybe it won't. But I'm going in. Then they get the phone call from Cisco. Hey, all senior people, go to the captain's office and
please wash your hands first.
So they get there, and sure enough, there's just freaky stuff going on all over the place. I think it's snowing on the promenade, which I don't know who would be imagining snow on the promenade. But
is that a euphemism, by the way?
Maybe. Maybe.
There may be snow on the promenade, but there's fire in the belly.
Is that a rule of acquisition?
It will be in about 5 more years for me. I'm sure.
It's about to be.
It's the only way I'm going to get any acquisitions is if by.
Oh, okay. So, and then another guy shows up. Good old Buck Bokai shows up.
Yeah, because Cisco's reading his Kindle, just kind of laid back, and then all of a sudden Jake comes in and he's like, "Dad,
this guy followed me home from the holodeck."
Yeah.
Which is strange, and there's some side stories here about the death of baseball, American baseball, or Earth based. Anyway, they're talking about the death of the sport, and I'm assuming at that point with space travel and all the other things, people got preoccupied and began to lose interest. It may be that interest was divided between other intergalactic sports that have now are now available. Apparently the last World Series had only 300 in attendance, which seemed a little strange to me, but I guess that's certainly possible. My my belief is that one of the primary reasons had less to do with the distractions as the as the quality of the players. Looking at the physical condition of Buck Bokai, I'm guessing that dude, if he represents the physical specimen of the best baseball player in the 22nd, 23rd century, then that says a lot for the death of the sport.
It's unfortunate that Nutrisystem endorsements were no longer available at that time. I'm Buck Bokai for Nutrisystem.
Just have a shake for breakfast.
And a sensible it's a shake and a sensible breakfast.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, he needs a shake weight as well. Well, good old Buck Bokai. Okay, so we digress. So we now have multiple fake individuals just kind of floating around. We're trying to keep track of them all. You've got Rumpelstiltskin. You've got Buck Bokai.
Right.
You've got Dax in a really bad episode of The Parent Trap All Grown Up or something.
Yeah.
Quark's got a couple of cuties hanging on his arm.
Right. Yeah. And when they all convene at Ops though, and and Cisco realizes that the Dax is
not the real Dax.
Julian's fantasy, the look on his face was pretty good. It was pretty good.
You're creepy.
It was just a look like, we all knew it, but really, it's like, there's a reason we keep calling a hazmat team down to the doctor's quarters, especially after he has dinner with Dax. But anyhow, so that was, and they figure out that it's a subspace disruption of some sort. Is that right? Well,
that's what they're blaming it on, and so then they start exploring. But as you know, the more they explore and hypothesize, their worst possible hypotheses continue to come true.
Yeah, this whole thing is a lot like booze in my case. Like if I have too much booze, that's when I get on social media and tell the objects of my fantasies my thoughts, and I become Julian. Yeah, Julian Van Gelder. And it's not a pretty thing, and so you gotta be really careful with these subspace disruptions, and your boots.
Yes, absolutely. The anomaly starts growing, just like it did for Julian.
I was gonna say, did Dax rub it?
And so they look back in the history books, try and find a reason or a previous occurrence of something like this, and they found a Vulcan vessel had experienced a similar occurrence. Tech speak, they come up with some way to throw some pebbles at it or whatever, and it's get it to close up. So, does that sound about right?
Yeah, but not before Dax insults the Vulcans about their lack of use of their imaginations, which I imagine that there were several iterations of Surak, not Serac, but Surak of Vulcan, striding the ship's corridors. Perhaps, there was a lot of, Vulcan hand sign being shared.
Sure.
Maybe they, I don't know, did some... You know what? Maybe she's right about the Vulcan imagination.
I don't know. I would think they would have some sort of an imagination. I think imagination is it's how one method that beings use to solve problems is through hypothesis, through imagining possible outcomes and choosing. So that's all based on imagination, isn't it?
I think so, and I think the imagination is also the waking subconscious. So I think when you're asleep, maybe it's not your imagination at work, but it certainly seems to be your subconscious draws upon imaginative scenarios to, I think, help. I'm not sure if this is proven, but isn't it a theory that in sleep dreams I know these aren't dreams, but dreams serve to kind of clear out the memory banks of a human's brain, kind of clear out a lot of stuff through the use of imagery and stuff like that.
Sure.
Which I think you're right about the imagination, though.
So I don't know that I buy that as an issue of the Vulcans, although I don't have any direct proof that they don't dream or dreaming is illogical or them making those claims. And their logic is a construct of their conscious beings, not their unconscious beings.
Right.
So I would think they would have some of that, but I don't know. I don't know enough about Vulcan psychology to tell you.
Yeah.
So they've got this thing that's accelerating towards them and growing and going to tear apart the space station and apparently Bajoran and maybe envelop the wormhole all at the same time. So they're starting to get pretty scared.
Yeah, and they might take out Shinerbach's former home on that planet they incinerated just so 200,000 people could have power.
It was a moon, not a planet.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
But it probably would take out the planet as well. So then, strangely, the writers tip their hand, and they have the huddle of the three beings, and they're talking about how they're trying to understand humans, and that seemed very convenient and a bit out of place that they would tip their hand that way and that early.
They're about 4 episodes out of the end of the season, and you can tell.
Let's phone this in. Okay, we got to solve this problem, and so the three of them are talking about how they're trying to learn. So that really tips their hand that they're not particularly or necessarily violent, but they're explorers. They're just strange explorers that we don't understand.
Right, accepted, and then that lets all of the dramatic tension of the episode is gone there at that point, because you realize,
assuming they can solve the problem.
I just never felt any real tension like there was a problem anyway. Yeah. But also, I a couple of interesting things in there. I don't know if I'm jumping around a little bit.
Yeah.
Kira experiences her own grief.
Oh, that's right, the Burning Man.
She goes to Burning Man, and it's a disturbing scene because she clearly has post-traumatic stress disorder of some sort, and she would. I mean, knowing what the backstory of the character,
Sure.
PTSD would be a logical thing she might suffer and deal with. So that was a very disturbing image of Burning Man coming at you, and right. Yeah. I mean, it was like the one thing that made me kind of wake up in this episode. Mm-hmm. And it was a nice, when I say nice, I mean dramatically, it was a nice little bit more to add to Kira's character,
Right. The burning guy did not show up at the conversation, though.
No. Can you imagine him just sitting there kind of having a cigarette? And then they're looking at him, he's like, what?
And Quark's two Dabo girls, or whatever they were, they didn't show up either. They were probably busy with Quark, would be my guess.
Right. And, of course, didn't know if we mentioned earlier on, but Quark realized due to Odo that, oh my God, a lot of people's fantasies are to clean out Quark and win at the Dabo table. But
yeah,
which was the one thing that kind of shrank Odo up like a spider on a hot stove for a while there with those two.
Well, he was trying to kick people out, but he didn't. It didn't look like he was successful.
No.
So is he trying to outwish them?
Yeah. Well, if wishes were horses, right? But
there you go.
And then Odo. Then later, back to where we were, Odo, who's like going, I don't have these. Then he has a fantasy of locking up Quark, which was...
on a side note, you do a pretty good Odo.
Oh, thank you.
A good Odo harumph.
Yeah, remember that. We'll be doing it throughout the series as we go, but it actually is a very important line all the way up to the very end of the show. So, but thank you. So he dreams of that. Well, then they figure out some, MacGuffin to stop this folded space thing or whatever it is. I don't really know. To me, space is like a fitted sheet. I don't know how you fold it. It's not going to work. So, but I love watching torpedoes fire, man. Yeah.
So they're throwing torpedoes, and then that just angered the envelope or whatever it was. And
you don't want to do that.
don't anger the envelope. And so it starts accelerating towards them. Ask Dax about angry envelopes.
Oh boy.
Okay, so then Cisco has his Rumpelstiltskin epiphany, because Rumpelstiltskin says, "Hey, I can solve all these problems if I still haven't gotten a child. So I'll go ahead and take that kid off your hands, and I'll solve all your problems." And Cisco's realizing that this is a sort of all a fairy tale. So
the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or
that's true.
The bad child actress. So I don't know why he didn't say, "Yeah, all right, fine, go."
Can you take cake? Cake too.
And O'Brien would be like, "You know what? I'm out. I tried at the beginning. I'm out.
I'm saving the station here." But Cisco does make the realization that this is all a construct. The emergency is a construct of their imagination, just as those beings were a construct of their imagination. Right. And so he basically tells everyone to, just to cool their jets, believe in him, put down the shields, start, right. calm down, and sure enough, it works. Ta-da.
There was a great line from Kira just before that where she's like, "Subspace oscillation, what the hell does that mean?" And I'm sitting there thinking, is that Nana Visitor just ad-libbing her frustration at all the techno-babble in this episode? Because...
Right.
Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, so Cisco figures it out, and it's like, everybody just use your imagination to not use your imagination.
Right. Yes. Think of good thoughts. Ugh. Raindrops on roses.
Yeah.
Then it's basically over. They're like, we don't understand you humans and your imaginations.
Yeah.
And your figments.
But pre-Nutrisystem Bokai tells Cisco all this, and they kind of have a little polite farewell, and because Cisco has warmth for this character, and
right,
because Cisco is part of this whole trope that baseball is somehow this most incredible, eloquent.
That it's an analogy, a metaphor for human existence. I mean, that's how the series started.
It's true. It is. And the more I think about that, the more I think that that's just not. To me, a better one is football, because frankly, you're just gutting it out, getting the shit kicked out of you every. You get 4 tries at something, and then you have to punt.
Yeah.
And you hope you get another chance. See, to me, that's more life than baseball.
Fair enough.
There's for every 17 minutes of commercials and replay, there's 11 minutes of action. That's also, to me, that's life.
And getting kicked in the balls a lot.
So there you go. So, but speaking of balls, there's something rather iconic that does happen at the end of this episode.
Yes.
Old Buck tosses Cisco a baseball.
Yes.
That baseball will be in every episode going forward.
Ah, interesting.
On Cisco's desk.
Wow.
Or at least a baseball will.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So there's that. So Cisco has a ball.
Great.
Okay.
So one question before we get to the wrap up. Okay. So these beings just kind of leave, and that's it. And they're kind of Q-like beings in that they seem to have some pretty extraordinary power. Do they appear again? Is there any? Are they restricted to this time space? They seem to be.
I don't think they're anywhere near as omnipotent as the Q. I think that they're advanced and they have some obvious Deus ex machina type powers where they can to suit the story or lack thereof. But
they're like the big brain guys on that one planet in the original series.
Oh, like the Talosians?
Yes.
On Talos 4, yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, except the Talosians are so physically weak, and they can't really leave Talos. That's why they need people to come to Talos. They need bodies that work. That's why they kidnap Captain Pike. Whereas these folks can travel and do so. And I think they're fairly benign. They don't appear to want to hurt anyone. They actually have kind of the same mission as Picard and Kirk, which is to seek out new life and intelligent civilizations, to boldly go as Buck Buckeye,
as Rumpelstiltskin, has never gone before.
Yeah. It's So that's really all I know about that one. There's a little background that I checked out on this was that initially Rumpelstiltskin. I'm not going for the joke. I'm not going to do it.
No. I was thinking of Rumplemints. I was going to have some of that, but I couldn't bear to actually go buy some Rumplemints just for this episode.
You might have to wear a disguise or something, and you might get arrested for having a mask on at the liquor store.
Yeah.
Initially, Rumpelstiltskin was supposed to be a leprechaun.
It kind of reminds me of that movie, The Leprechaun. You remember with that little guy who goes, "I'm the leprechaun." Garth, I'm the leprechaun.
Cool it, okay?
I'm the leprechaun.
Stop it, all right?
Don't try and steal me, pot of gold.
But Colm Meaney, rightly so, Irishman that he is, threw an absolute, I don't mean like a fit in a bad way, but
like that's offensive to my people.
He said, I've got something on, if you go to Memory Alpha about this episode, there's an interview with Michael Piller, who created the show. I believe it was with Michael Piller. Yeah. He said they needed to make some modification of the script because Colm Meaney was pretty upset because he called up Rick Berman, who co-created the show, and said, every Irish actor I know, imagine an Irish accent here, every Irish actor I know has worked his entire life to overcome the stereotype of Irish people and leprechauns. It's really racist, and I don't want to do it.
That's good.
And then they said, we have no idea there was any sensitivity to leprechauns in the Irish culture, and certainly we did not want to force Colm Meaney to act with a leprechaun, but what the hell do you do after you've got a whole story structured around a leprechaun stealing a child? Well, we went through the story, and Robert Hewitt Wolf came up with Rumpelstiltskin, which they managed to work. And it's funny because wasn't Colm Meaney in Up the Long Ladder, the TNG episode where they had all basically the Irish that they beamed up to the holodeck and they had straw? And it was really offensive. And you and I both are of Irish extraction, but I'm an American. I don't run around going, I'm offended of you Irish people.
Right.
But my next door neighbor is actually Irish. He immigrated here 8 years ago maybe. He's Irish. I can't imagine he would watch that and not just be terribly offended. Maybe not as much by the leprechaun, but definitely by Up the Long Ladder. That one's just obviously bad.
Yeah, but that's based on Irish American immigrants much more than it was the Irish.